everyone here in this audience could be a great presenter. Everyone. I think it's in all of you. Every person here with the right coaching, the right mentoring, with the right skills and abilities, with the right time, the right teacher, can turn themselves into a great communicator. Now, I know all of you here think you're pretty good public speakers. I get this every so often, and the thing I always hear is, I'm afraid of public speaking. I'm fine in a small group, but I need lots. When I'm in front of lots of people, I get scared. Now, when I define lots of people, sometimes for people it's 3. I mean, you'd be amazed how many people are afraid to speak to groups of more than 2. Some people, it's 100. Everybody's different. Now, how do I look at myself? Why am I a coach? What do I bring to you as potential speakers? I look at myself like Yoda or Obi-Wan Kenobi. The force is within all of you. It's just a matter of helping somebody, you, tap into that force. Learning how to use it. Now, everyone cannot be a Jedi Master. There are always people that aren't as proficient, as good, as quick, as into it as other people are. They usually wind up dead, or hands cut off, and you can see that when, and his name went out, the bad guy in Star Wars.
Darth Vader.
Darth Vader, thank you. Darth Vader cut off Luke Skywalker's hand. Luke realized that he had a lot more to learn, and that's when he went and really got the training that he needed. We all need training. We all need teachers that can help us get to where we need to be. And part of that training is not telling us about our products, is not telling us about our services, because people don't buy products and services. They buy people whom they trust or think they like or think that they know. And your job, when you go out there to talk about your products and services, is really to sell yourself, is to be a good storyteller. As Brenton just said, it's all in good stories. Everything is about stories. Stories sell. Stories don't tell. Stories sell. And it's my job as head coach to bring out those stories, to help you create from your own experience stories that will make people remember you, that will make you special, that will make you different from everybody else who's out there doing exactly the same thing that you're doing. Part of this is, and those of you who wish me a happy birthday, I thank you. And why I bring that up is because I talked to my sister the other day. And I know most people in this audience have never heard me talk about my sister, but 40 years ago she was the first nurse to ever get involved in medical malpractice law. She had been a trained nurse in the days when there were only nurses trained. Remember that? Nursing schools, Mount Sinai in New York. Went to work for the Federated Hospitals. And she became the leader and one of the first people to get into risk management in hospitals. The reason you sign all those papers and they go through the whole thing and there's a risk manager is because of her. She developed that whole thing, because before then, back in the 1970s, they took lawyers and tried to teach them medicine. She was the first nurse that they taught law to, and found that she could see malpractice when the lawyers never saw it. She had the ability to go to the Federation, Jewish hospitals, and say, settle this. This is what you settle it for, because if you don't settle this here, the real malpractice is over here, and it's going to cost you a fortune. So let's get it done. The reason also I bring this up is because when we were talking Tuesday night, she told me about a case that she had worked on a couple of years ago. And it finally came to court last week. And it involved a young man who was a professional athlete. He was a runner, one of those elite like Don was talking about. They had done some tests because he was having tremendous pain in his right leg. They couldn't figure it out. They did all kinds of muscles. Finally, he went through the whole thing. And I don't know exactly how this works. You can help me with this, John. They found a tumor. It's in the bone cancer in the bone.
Osteosarcoma.
Whatever it is. He can say it a lot easier than I can. And they, aggressive chemo, aggressive radiation, and they got to the point where they said they couldn't do it anymore. It was starting, they were afraid it was going to metastasize, so they had to take his leg off. Late at night, this is why you should never go to a hospital without an advocate there to be aware of what's going on, because he was in pain, so they were drugging him up. And they came up with all the papers, and they had him sign, and it was the right leg, but the paper said left leg. And he was aware enough to say, no, it's not my right, my left, it's my, and the resident, a first-year resident who was given the papers, wound up saying, sign, I gotta go, I'll change it. Well, if you ever notice when you make one mistake, they keep on compounding themselves. They get into the operating room, they look at the papers, they check everything, supposedly, and they take off the left leg. Well, they can't leave when they realize it, and they look at the bone, they realize there's no tumor in there, they realize they made a mistake, they had to take off the other leg. Now, it's not the crime that gets you in trouble, it's the cover-up. You ever notice that? And they doctored everything, pardon the pun, but they doctored everything to make it look like the tumor had spread into his left leg. Well, this went through. This case came up about 8-9 years ago, and the hospital just wanted to settle. Now, if I'm an elite athlete, I would never settle. Would anybody here settle? You take that right to the court. What jury would not be sympathetic? Would you agree, John?
It's one of the that's the one.
That's horror.
It's the third class.
Right. It's horror. And they got down. They got to the trial after putting it off and putting it off, and they asked for a summary judgment. Isn't that how it goes, Tom? You ask for a summary judgment, and the judge looked at it and threw it out. He wouldn't give it to him. He said, contrary to the evidence that was clear, he could also see for himself, in plain sight, that the plaintiff didn't have a leg to stand on. That is a great story. I told that story here 3-4 times. I sucked him in too. That's what makes people memorable. That story had all the elements of a great presentation. And I was taught that. I was mentored. I was coached on how to tell a story like that by my coach and mentor, may you rest in peace. Because it had all the elements of a great story and a presentation. It had purpose. I was prepared. I've practiced that 100 times. 100 times, 30 years I've been telling that story and getting away for it. I have presence in the setup. That's what makes a great presentation. And every one of you has your own story. And my job as coach is to make your story as memorable as that one. Mr. Toastmaster.